The term Persia refers to a succession of states that emerged one after another in the territory of what is now modern Iran, the Middle East, and the Caucasus. Some of these states were founded by the Parsis themselves, while others, also known as Persia, were ruled by Parthians or Arabs, peoples of different origin and religion. Early Persia, particularly the Achaemenid Empire, was the largest power in the East and played a key role in shaping the cultural and civilizational identity of the region. Our knowledge of Persia largely comes from Greek authors who, to put it mildly, were not sympathetic to the Persians. Their bias added a negative tint to many descriptions of Persian society and politics. Meanwhile, Persia's own chronicles and sacred texts, the Avesta, were destroyed during the Arab conquest of Iran, when fanatical religious zealots burned anything they considered pagan. The Persian people, or Parsis, are first mentioned in Assyrian records near the southern borders of the Caucasus. The word Pars translates roughly as heroic or mighty. They were part of the larger Indo-Aryan group that migrated into Iran and India from the north. Their military superiority came from key innovations like the invention of the wheel, the chariot, and the domestication of the horse. These advantages allowed them to defeat native kingdoms and establish themselves as the elite. The Avesta describes their ancestral homeland as Aryana Vija, an immense northern plain near a sea called Varukasha, home to a special kind of fish, with nearby mountains where gods dwell, and lands where half the year is daylight and the other half is night. This poetic geography suggests the Eurasian steppes, possibly the Caspian Sea and the Volga River, where sturgeon live, and further north lie the lands of the polar night. Archaeological excavations in Archaemenid and Sintashta in the southern Urals have revealed vast steppe cities filled with artifacts familiar to Indo-Iranian culture, chariots, swastika motifs, and solar symbols. These regions were later inhabited by the Scythians and Sarmatians, ethnic cousins of the Persians who spoke Iranian languages and preserved some of the oldest Indo-Aryan traditions. It's likely that the steppes of Kazakhstan and Siberia were the cradle of the Parsis, who for centuries were part of the Indo-European community before heading south in search of power and destiny. It was here that the prophet Zoroaster first preached, receiving divine revelation and urging the Aryans to abandon the worship of sacred animals and demons and to adopt monotheism. Vast groups of Aryans, still undivided into Persians and Indians, migrated to Iran and India. In India, they destroyed the civilization of Mohenjo-Daro and established their own rule, becoming the dominant caste in a society split into four varnas: rulers and priests, Brahmins, of white color, warriors, Kshatriyas, of red, merchants and craftsmen, Shudras, of black. Non-Aryans were excluded from full participation in society, and contact with them was strictly limited. Later, a religious split occurred. Zoroastrianism took root in Iran, while in India and Scythia, the ancient cults remained dominant. As a result, the gods of India became demons in Iran, and vice versa. The Persians were seen by others as apostates, and among the Scythians, for example, their kings were never forgiven for such betrayal. This religious and cultural divide marked a turning point. Among the Iranian peoples, the first major power to rise was Media. A sophisticated civilization, it left behind many bronze figurines of fantastic creatures almost identical to Scytho-Siberian griffins found in the Altai Mountains. The Medes subdued other Iranian tribes and entered into conflict with Assyria, calling on their Scythian brothers for aid. The Scythians, however, defeated both sides and ruled the east with an iron fist for 25 years before being driven out. For the Persians, the greatest virtue was courage. After military valor, the second most honored trait was fertility. Every year, the king sent gifts to the man with the most sons. Boys from age 5 to 20 were taught only three things: horse riding, archery, and truthfulness. Lying was the greatest shame, and so were debts, since a debtor was considered bound to lie. They treated rivers with great reverence, never spitting into them or washing in them, and forbade others from doing so. The Parsi rose to power suddenly, initially aligning themselves with various despotic regimes of the ancient East, which were frequently in conflict with one another and with the Medes, the Persians' close kin. The great Persian king Cyrus II, also known as Kurosh, freed himself from these entanglements, conquered Media, and then Babylon. According to legend, his father Astyages tried to kill him as an infant to eliminate a rival heir. The servant entrusted with the deed could not bring himself to commit the murder and raised Cyrus as his own. Years later, Cyrus, while playing with other children, was chosen as their king and beat up a noble boy who refused to obey him. Astyages, upon learning this, saw familiar features in the boy's face and realized the truth. Although furious, he was persuaded by his magi that the child no longer posed a threat since he had already reigned in play. Eventually, Cyrus joined a real conspiracy against Astyages. No battle even occurred. Astyages' own army seized and surrendered him to Cyrus, who was now widely admired and nearly deified by his people. Egypt and Babylon, longtime enemies, saw the growing might of Persia and attempted an alliance to stop it, but distrust and the vast distances between them made cooperation impossible. In 359 BCE, Cyrus besieged Babylon. The city surrendered without resistance, as its army had already been crushed. Cyrus then turned his attention eastward to the Saka of Turan, who posed a constant threat. The war was brutal and costly for both sides, and Cyrus died in battle. Cyrus was acknowledged as a great king not only by Persians, but also by Greeks and even Babylonians. According to Jewish prophecy, he was the anointed of Yahweh, destined to rebuild Jerusalem and its temple. The early Parsis, unlike their descendants, lived ascetically. Herodotus writes that they wore clothes made of animal skins and woolen caps, abstained from wine, and ate only what they had, not what they desired. They were indifferent to gold and silver. In honor of their legendary ancestor Achaemenes, who was suckled by an eagle, Cyrus's empire became known as the Achaemenid Empire, simply Persia. Cyrus's son Cambyses conquered Egypt, Armenia, and Asia Minor. Under Darius, the Achaemenid Empire reached its zenith, threatening Greece and even waging war against Scythia. But decline soon followed. Babylon rebelled and gained wide autonomy. Egypt overthrew Persian rule and regained its independence. Eventually, a small Macedonian force under Alexander the Great landed and began conquering Persia, city by city. After the decisive Battle of Gaugamela, it became clear that the Persian Empire was collapsing. When Alexander was celebrated in Babylon, it marked not only his triumph, but also the morning of the Achaemenid Empire, soon to be replaced by the Hellenistic Seleucid Iran, a state resembling Persia in form but ruled by Greeks.